You are LockedOn Braves POSTCAST, part of LockedOn Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
And hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley, Jake Mastroianni with you after a Braves 2-1 win over the Detroit Tigers. If that sounds familiar, it's because about 24 hours ago, we were having a similar discussion, same score, but the Braves, of course, will take wins in all shapes and sizes, and by whatever run differential they need, as long as it's at least one. That is mathematically how that works, and that's exactly what the Braves got in this game. We'll talk about the great start from Spencer Schwellenbach, the early offense that proved to be more than enough, and of course get you set up for the finale of the series, which comes your way on a Wednesday afternoon, and maybe a peek ahead to the road trip that's ahead for the Braves as well. We'll do all of that on this edition of the Braves podcast. Before we get started, though, make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta here on YouTube. Subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download that Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get $20 off your first purchase, and of course, terms apply. Well, Jake, it is a very similar script to what we saw a night ago, but I'll tell you this, when we were sitting here, I don't know, about 24 hours ago, talking about what it would take to win today, one of the things we pointed at was maybe another great start from Spencer Schwellenbach, and that's exactly what we saw on Tuesday night at Truist Park.
Yeah, we certainly did. We're seeing a kid kind of grow up before our eyes here at the big league level. I mean, somebody came up in his first two starts, kind of struggled a little bit, but continues every start to kind of figure some things out and get even better. And, I thought this was another step in the right direction after his last start against Baltimore.
Yeah, and Baltimore we knew was going to maybe be that big test for him where you kind of needed to pass in order to earn a little bit more of an opportunity. And he passed that test with flying colors against one of the best offenses in baseball. The Tigers are certainly not that, but the fact that we're seeing Spencer Schwellenbach take these steps and continue his development at the major league level, that has to be incredibly encouraging. 6 innings of one-run ball to pick up his first major league win on this night. It's going to be one he won't forget anytime soon.
He certainly won't. And again, you never know. And we talked about it with Walter. We talked about it with others. The Braves have been very aggressive in calling up some of these starters. Now, the one thing about Schwellenbach, I mean, he was a college player. He had Tommy John coming out. So he's not necessarily, he's young and relatively, but, a guy that is probably had some more maturity and some time to grow. And he talked about it after the game, the fact that, going through that long stretch of having Tommy John after getting drafted and having to deal with that. And, just kind of learning while you're not able to play. And, you can just see it from him and the growth that he's shown and the stuff that he has. I mean, again, we've said it, really good stuff from him. And it's just knowing how to sequence those pitches better, where to throw them in certain counts. And I feel like he's done a much better job of that each time out. And, this one, last one, obviously going up against a much tougher lineup in the Orioles, we said yesterday, that had to give him confidence knowing that he can trust his stuff, even against one of the best teams, one of the best offenses in baseball. Mm-hmm. That's got to be a huge boost for him. And to be able to take that into this start as well and just continue to do those same things and use all of those pitches. He had to strike out with 5 different pitches in this one, just being able to mix it up. And, really from the get-go, and they talked about it, CJ talked about it on the broadcast, sometimes you want to save some pitches for a second, third time through. But I think when you got 5 or 6 pitches, you could kind of match up the sequencing every time through the order to help keep hitters off balance, especially when they all have the movement that they do. So it's a very, deep pitch mix for him. They all have great movement, and he has great command seemingly with all of them.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of like the old catch-all answer on those multiple choice tests that you have. A, fastball, B, breaking ball, C, change. No, we'll just hit D, all of the above, or maybe it's E, all of the above, because he could use them whenever he wanted to, and he would, be able to mix these hitters up a little bit more, or at least keep them honest, keep them off balance, not let them start to sit on 1 or 2 particular offerings or tendencies that he may show as well. And I think that's kind of part of the on-the-job training. But the fact that he's been able to make these adjustments, Jake, at the big league level is very impressive. And you hit on something that I think a lot of people might kind of dismiss a little bit with him, because you see 20-year-old A.J. Smith-Shawver come up. You see 21, 22-year-old Hurston Waldrop coming up less than a year after being drafted. Spencer Schwellenbach turned 24 right after coming to the big leagues. Again, he's relatively young, but in terms of baseball experience, professional experience, perhaps, and also life experience, he's got a little bit more to draw on. And I do think that that is an advantage for a young pitcher who's just kind of figured a few things out, if that all makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge for him, and it doesn't seem like that much of a difference between say a 21-year-old Waldrop and 24-year-old Schwellenbach, but You've seen it with this guy. We talked about it even in his first start. He gave up that 3-run home run to Lane Thomas, but then, he settled down and worked through that inning. And even in this start, he gave up the one out or the leadoff triple
Yeah.
to start the sixth, gave up the run there, gave up a single, but then settled down. And credit to Brian Snitker and really this Braves staff for one, sticking with him after those first two starts. But then I think that just shows the confidence in this one with Brian Snitker. It's a one-run ball game there in that sixth inning. He gives up a couple of hits in that inning, but Snitker allows him to pitch through it. And I don't think you do that unless you see some sort of maturity in this kid and have a trust with him, knowing that he can kind of push that aside. Okay, you've given up that first run. They've cut the lead in half. But in trusting that he can settle down and make the pitches that he needs to get out of that inning, I mean, that's a different level. And that's something that doesn't come easy for young pitchers that are coming up. And kind of bringing it back to the Waldrop case, you saw in the fourth inning, he ran into some trouble and he just didn't have that maturity factor that comes with just, being a little bit older, working through some of those battles and being able to get through that. I'm not trying to knock on Waldrop. I like him and I think he's going to, but it's just, talking about that maturity factor with Schwellenbach that he has, being a little bit older, kind of going through some of those battles already.
Yeah, and I think that, not all prospects are created equally, and that comes from a variety of different, avenues, however you want to look at it, different factors. I mean, age certainly could be one, experience is another one. The overall arsenals are also going to be important. And the one thing about Spencer Schwellenbach that we've seen throughout every single start that he's made here at the big league level thus far is he stays around the plate. Some pitchers, they get in trouble. And again, not to pick on Waldrop, he's just the guy that's the most recent example. Kind of some self-inflicted wounds with some free base runners that made things a little bit worse. Whereas with Schwellenbach, that doesn't really seem to be a problem. He is able to stay around the plate. Will he walk a guy here or there? Sure. But it's not going to be those innings where you have a bunch of free base runners and a big home run time and again. And we'll see how this all plays out. But ultimately, I feel like being and living around the strike zone and throwing quality strikes, pitcher strikes, not just throwing it over to get over because you're afraid to walk somebody, is another thing that Spencer Schwellenbach is extremely good at thus far. Now, on the Braves offensive side, it was early runs instead of late runs on this night. Kelenic with a single, Ozzie Albies with the triple knocks him in. Then Marcell Ozuna comes through with his 63rd run batted in. And just like that, in the bottom of the first, it's 2-0 Braves. And that was everything that they would get in this game. There was some trust, obviously, in that sixth inning for Schwellenbach to get through and to keep it a one-run game after giving up a leadoff triple in that frame. Only 5 hits for each side tonight, Jake. Braves got set the early tone, though, and I think that that's something that kind of harkens back to what they did a year ago. It's nice to score early. You'd love to add on, but being able to give Schwellenbach those 2 quick runs, that had to feel good to give him a lead to work with and let him settle in.
It certainly did, and it just, after the Braves had those early chances, they had chances in the second inning as well. Got the first 2 runners on, but weren't able to get anything in, and you thought at that point, okay, maybe they're going to break this open. They had Casey Mize's pitch count up to 50, but once they weren't able to come through there, it really just, as the game went on, you felt like there's not going to be a lot of runs scored in this one. And you felt like 2 might hold up with the way that Schwellenbach was pitching. You knew you had the guys at the back end of the bullpen for the Braves ready to go. The Tigers threw out some of their better guys to try to keep this game close as well. So it just kind of felt like in that game, it was going to be low scoring. And you felt like there was a chance that 2 runs might hold up. Would have loved for more to happen. But again, to be able to get those early runs for Spencer Schwellenbach and allow him to just, kind of be able to work through it and to give, again, that confidence that you have in him to be able to manage through all of that and get through 6 innings, again, speaks a lot about Schwellenbach. But again, going back to the offensive side of things, would love to see more of those first inning runs, would also love to see them add on throughout. But hey, we're going to take the wins, Grant.
Yeah, the wins all look the same in the standings, that's for sure. They're not all created equally. They don't all, feel the same when you go through them, but a win is a win, as they do say. Looking at one thing that I feel like might have kept the Braves from getting that chance to break through is that the Tigers did pull Casey Mize after 4 innings. His pitch count was up to 87 by that point, so sending him out for the 5th was probably as far as he was going to go, but I don't think that they were looking to tempt fate, if you will, with this Braves lineup to give them another look at Casey Mize, who was not necessarily dominating and hasn't really been able to truly unlock all the potential they were hoping that he would have upon taking him as the number 1 overall pick back in 2018. Putting all that aside, though, the Braves win their 40th game of the season. Last year, that happened on June the 10th. As we remember, June a year ago, there were some winning streaks that went on for the Braves. They haven't found one of those yet here this month, but they're just not that far off, Jake. The pace that they were on a year ago, they are in a pretty good place. If the offense can continue to, at least do what it needs to do on a daily basis and maybe start to tap into what they were doing over the weekend, you're just going to feel a lot better about this club moving forward, though they have had to deal with the hurdles of losing Ronald Acuna Jr. And more recently, Michael Harris. It's going to be a work in progress for a little bit, but you have to be encouraged at least by this homestand, which, by the way, with this win, is a winning homestand after what was a forgettable road trip.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a rough stretch for the Braves. So, again, I know it doesn't, look pretty necessarily, a 2-1 ball game, but, it's a win, and you're going to take these with the way things have been going lately, and you want to win series. And that's, the old Bobby Cox thing, just win every series. And that's what every team wants to do, obviously. But, that happens. You're going to be exactly where you want to be at the end of the season. And despite all the struggles that the Braves have had, they're still in a great spot for the postseason in that top wild card spot. And I know Snicker said the other day their plan is still to win the division. And I get that. They put themselves in quite a hole. Phillies had a walk-off win on this night as well, so weren't able to pick up another game there. But that's not totally my concern at the moment. My concern is getting this Braves team back to where it should be offensively. And look, it's tough. As you said, you lose an Acuna, you lose a Michael Harris. It's not going to be the same. But again, with the way this pitching staff has been, you really don't need all that much to pick up wins like you have in the last two games.
Yeah, and I mean, short-term goals, long-term goals, those things typically are meant to work together. And the Braves are not going to change their goal of winning the National League East, and that shouldn't surprise anybody either, because there's no guarantee that by playing in the wild card round that all of a sudden your fate is somehow going to be better than it would have been in the division series with the week off. Though, admittedly, you look at those results and you just want any kind of change. But I found that what people love more than change is improvement. And we'll see if the Braves are able to make some of those come October, which last I checked is, about 3.5 months away. When we continue here on the Braves Postcast, though, we'll talk a little bit more about Spencer Schwellenbach, other things we saw in this game, and of course, we'll be previewing Game 3 of the series. It comes your way next as the Braves Postcast continues. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer that you get to first pitch. With those killer last-minute deals, they're all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Game Time has last-minute deals on so many things, though. Sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You can save up to 60% off with their last-minute deals. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download that Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Just create that account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off after you download the Game Time app today. Game Time, last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Get the supplies you need from the site that is made for skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. It's a reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and their latest product info to get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, you can get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros and skilled trades can get competitive edge by joining supplyhouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks. That's supplyhouse.com. Well, Jake, let's take a look at the box score and the line score of this game. As the Braves, I mentioned, won their 40th game of the year. They're now 40-31. Atlanta with 2 runs on 5 hits, no errors. Braves left 4 men on base. Tigers dropped to 34-39, a run on 5 hits, couple of errors for them, and 8 men left on base. They did have their opportunities, but unable to cash them in as Spencer Schwellenbach was dialed in. Picked up his first major league victory. He improves to 1-2 on the year. Casey Mize takes a loss, drops to 1-5. I know we've talked a lot about Spencer Schwellenbach and what has made him so good. This was a career best night for him, obviously, in a number of different ways. The 7 strikeouts, the first major league win. And I think it just continues to show that, with this opportunity in this 5th spot of the order, forget the 6-man rotation for a minute. Spencer Schwellenbach seems to be, at least in the last couple of starts especially, starting to carve out a little bit of a toehold there.
He has. We'll see how long they continue to run him out there. And again, that's why I say credit to the Braves for sticking with him after those first 2 starts. A young pitcher, not a lot of experience. They could have very easily pulled the plug, but you saw something in him, I think, even in those first 2 starts that said he can have success at this level. Just got to figure out how to mix up those pitches. And he's done that. He's made that adjustment, and we've seen the results in these last 2 starts. So in my opinion, it's his job for now. The only question for me is, how many innings will they let him go? A guy that hasn't thrown a lot in professional career because of having Tommy John after getting drafted, only threw 65 pitches last year at the minor league level. So it's really just a question of how long can he go and how many innings can they get out of him? Because I think he's proven, and it's still very early, but at least in these last 2 starts, and again, one of them against one of the best lineups in baseball, that he can get things done at this level. And his stuff's good tonight. 18 whiffs tonight, not something you're typically going to see, I think, most nights from a Spencer Schwellenbach, but just the stuff was that good. But an 85.1 mile per hour average exit velocity against, I said this last time, that's Max Fried level type of weak contact. And that's what we're seeing him get with just the great movement that he has on his pitches. Kept the ball down, got 6 ground balls in this one to 2 flyouts. So again, he has certainly been impressive, and I think it's his job as long as the Braves allow him to go out there every 5th, 6th day.
Yeah, and I do think that, that innings limit, if you will, or how many innings they want to let him jump from the 65 he threw a year ago will be a question and a bit of a moving target. I mean, now that he is all the way back, all the way healthy from Tommy John, yeah, you want to be careful with him. Having him, go through a minor league season to this point, first couple of months, then jump to the big league level. Again, the 6-man rotation could also benefit him as well, depending on how long they want to do that. Though I've found in the past this experiment of trying to use 6 starters, it never really seems to stick longer than 3 weeks or a month. But we'll see if the Braves are able to manage that by using some quantity. But the quality that they're getting from Spencer Schwellenbach right now is kind of rewarding them for, as you said, giving talent an opportunity to come up and help at the big league level. And he's definitely done that. Now, the offense went wild over the course of the weekend. 9 home runs against the Rays, piled up 22 runs. And, of course, they come up with back-to-back 2-1 wins over the Tigers. So winning in a variety of ways, something we've also talked about on the show, is good to see. And you would say, I guess, about this Braves lineup the last couple of days that while the hits and the runs have been a little harder to come by, they've at least been opportunistic. And again, the pitching continues to carry them and continues to be a strength for this club.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it, the fact that just the identity of this team seems to have shifted. And that's not to say it can't get back and the offense can't make it more of a complete team. We've seen what they're capable of over the weekend against the Rays. But the identity of this team right now is great starting pitching and, some good defense behind them too, with Arcia and Riley, what they've done on the left side over there, some good defense. So again, you can win in multiple ways, and the Braves certainly have done that. We've seen, offenses down across the league this year for the most part. So to be able to have the rotation that the Braves have and the 4 guys that have pretty much, been there all year, and then you add in Spencer Schwellenbach and what he's able to do. And, that's really the success this season for a lot of teams for winning, is just having that dominant pitching, a great bullpen. You saw it tonight, rolling out a Pierce Johnson, a Joe Jimenez, and a Reynaldo Lopez to close things out with pretty much no stress in there. None of them allowed a hard hit ball. Jimenez and Pierce Johnson gave a couple of soft singles, but that was it. And so, again, that's just seems to be the recipe for whatever reason this season. Offense kind of down a little bit. But, I still believe, as I know you do, I think this offense can get back to being that type of offense that can carry this team at times when it needs to.
Yeah, it certainly can. Yeah, and Reynaldo Lopez was back tonight as he was in the 9th inning and picked up his 19th save. Good to see him bounce right back and lock that thing down. Looked very good in doing that. Pierce Johnson, Joe Jimenez, the men out of the bullpen after Schwellenbach. Strong core for the Atlanta bullpen right now. Hopefully A.J. Minter is going to be back in that mix at some point in the not-too-distant future. That will also help out. But you knew the big money that was spent to bring back Johnson and Jimenez on multi-year deals. This was kind of what you envisioned, those guys being the bridge to get to Reynaldo Lopez to close things out. This makes 2 series wins in a row for the Braves. It clinches that winning homestand. Much needed after that road trip, which included losing 3 out of 4 to the Nationals for the second time in a week, and also losing 2 out of 3 to the Baltimore Orioles in somewhat frustrating fashion, because you had a chance, at least in that second game, to maybe steal one, and they definitely took the finale there. But there have been some missed opportunities. There have been some wins left on the table over the course of, especially from May 1st on. But the Braves winning a couple of games like this, I guess, starts to feel like they are capable of taking a few of these. And yeah, against a team that on paper you should beat. But as we've also learned over the course of the season, and pretty much every year, the game is not played on paper.
It's not, and we've seen the Braves not beat teams that they should beat. I mean, the last losses to the Nationals, losing 6 of 8 to them. I mean, that stings.
It's baffling.
As scrappy as a team that they are, I know their pitching has gotten better. Like I said, a lot of teams' pitching has gotten better this year. They outplayed the Braves in those series, and that was tough to see and tough to watch. So, it doesn't really matter who they're going up against right now, whether things look better for them on paper. You got to be able to get it done on the field. So it's nice to see them do that against a couple of teams in the Rays and the Tigers that, those are series that you should be winning, but those are series the Braves hadn't been winning. So it's certainly great to see them be able to do that. And it's what you got to do. If you want to win 100 games, you want to get to the postseason, the first thing you got to do is beat teams that at least, supposed to be on paper, at least better than. And the Braves haven't been doing that for a little bit of a stretch. So again, I don't care if it's 2-1, 1-0, 3-2, whatever it is, win these games that you're supposed to win. And it's good to see the Braves finally start doing that.
Yeah, they have been able to do that a little bit more, and this was a series that goes a long way towards doing that. The Braves winning their 40th game in their 71st of the season. That puts them on pace for just over 91 wins thus far, and it hasn't felt like a 90-win team for a while, but the fast start and the ability to maybe bounce back here recently has kind of helped the Braves pull the nose up, and clearly the pitching has been the ones flying thus far, but can the offense jump in there and take it for the rest of the way this season? The Braves certainly hope that they can be a big factor in that. When we come back, we will discuss Game 3 of the series. Braves will try to sweep away the Tigers, but they've got a tough pitcher to deal with in Tarik Skubal, who's going to be on the mound. We'll also see Reynaldo Lopez back on the hill for the Braves. All he has done is throw great baseball for the Braves this season. Should be a marquee pitching matchup in that matinee at Truist Park. We'll talk about that next on the Braves Postcast. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week, from lowering select players' stats projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chance of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app. With over 5 million active members, get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. Download that Prize Picks app and use the code. It's LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, download the Prize Picks app. Use the code LockedOnMLB. You'll get a first deposit match of up to $100. Let's talk about Game 3 of the series. It comes your way at 12:20 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday at Truist Park. It's getaway day. Braves and Tigers will finish things off. Braves going for the sweep, and then heading out on the road, they'll see the Yankees, the Cardinals, and then one game against the White Sox. We'll talk about that in a moment. A chance for the sweep, though, is going to be a bit tough because one of the best pitchers in the American League, if not all of baseball, is going to be facing them, Tarik Skubal. They took Casey Mize #1 in the 2018 draft. They got Skubal in the 9th round, and I would say, Jake, that they scooped up a pretty good pitcher in the lefty who's going to be facing the Braves on Wednesday.
Yeah, just like we all thought coming into one of the pitching matchup between two of the best pitchers in baseball, Tarik Skubal, who I know was a little bit of a darling coming into the year, and Reynaldo Lopez, who nobody thought would be in the NL Cy Young race. And look, he's behind his other two teammates. If you look at the odds on FanDuel, but he's in there. He's in the mix with what he's been able to do. But Tarik Skubal, he's been fantastic. And the one thing that worries me about this matchup is he has one of the best four-seam fastballs in all of baseball, a positive run value of 10, according to Baseball Savant. He can get it up there in the upper 90s, and the Braves have struggled against four-seamers this year. So going to be a tough matchup for them. They've only scored 4 runs in the first 2 games, and now you got to face the guy who is right now the AL Cy Young favorite in Tarik Skubal. But I want to see some good at-bats. I want to see some competitive bats, see if you can work him through 5-6 innings, maybe get him out of there and get into that bullpen a little bit. Obviously, Lopez, his last time out, I know we'll get into him. I thought it was the most impressive start that he's had, but it's going to be a tough matchup for this Braves offense, who again has been struggling a little bit. I know they had a good weekend, but just 4 runs in this first 2 games, and now they're going up against the guy with one of the best four-seam fastballs in baseball.
Yeah, one of the best pitchers in baseball, most certainly. He's 8-2 with a 2.20 ERA is Skubal this year. Meanwhile, Reynaldo Lopez looks to continue his amazing season. If you're looking for the lowest ERA in baseball, it belongs to Reynaldo Lopez. He just slipped below the threshold for qualifying for the ERA title, but his 1.69 ERA is just below Ranger Suarez 1.77 mark. And either way, to your point, Jake, I don't think anybody was pointing at a mid-June matchup between the Tigers and the Braves and the Cy Young race that could be involving Tarik Skubal of the Tigers and Reynaldo Lopez of the Braves, a man that most people didn't even have in the Braves starting rotation when he signed as a free agent over the course of the offseason. But much as the game is not played on paper, each season has its own stories that develop. And for the Braves, Reynaldo Lopez and what he has been able to do in a rotation that lost its ace 2 starts into the season, I don't know. I mean, I know we've talked a lot about it, but it certainly can't be overstated how much he's meant to this club.
Yeah, it's been huge. I mean, again, when you lose a Spencer Strider, there's just no replacing that. But the production you've gotten is maybe even better than what Strider would have given you just to this point. And, I keep saying it. He's not going to have a sub-2 ERA this year, but he continues to just get better every start out. I said it earlier. His last start, I thought, was his most impressive start of the year because the Orioles, a really good lineup, put a ton of lefties in there, and he was able to, really dial up that changeup and curveball and mix it up to get those lefties out. So if he gets those pitches going, because the fastball slider combination is really good against righties, and that's been true all year long. But the one question was, how could he handle lefties, and can he have an out pitch against lefties? And that changeup curveball's kind of been up and down a lot this year. But again, that last start, I mean, he was brilliant with those pitches. He threw the changeup, curveball, and slider all the same number of times just because of the number of lefties that were in that Orioles lineup. So again, if those pitches start working for them, I mean, there's no reason why Reynaldo Lopez shouldn't be considered, a top of the rotation type of arm. Just because that fastball and that velocity, another question coming in, he's been able to hold that velocity deep in the start. So it's been really impressive. And again, we've discussed it, the fact that they've been able to give him that extra rest every time but one. I think that's helped as well. Keep that arm fresh and allow him to maintain that velocity and hold that velocity. But just really impressive stuff from Lopez. And like I said, he seems to get more comfortable in that starting role every time out.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what he wanted, was the opportunity to be a starting pitcher again. And you mentioned the Orioles lineup. We talked about it a lot with Spencer Schwellenbach when him tossing 6 innings of 2-run ball against him last time out. This was a more impressive start for Schwellenbach this time around. I don't know if Lopez can get much more impressive than he's been, but he can certainly try. He's 4-2 with a 1.69 ERA this year. Tarik Skubal's 8-2 with a 2.20 ERA. It's game 3 of this 3-game series, and then the Braves are off to face the Yankees and the Cardinals, and one game against the White Sox. You'll remember one of those got postponed earlier this year, I think back in April, as a matter of fact. So it should be an interesting road trip. Before we turn the page and maybe talk about that for a moment, or maybe we're running low on time, but I'd be remiss not to mention the loss of a baseball icon on Tuesday, as Willie Mays, the former Giants great, also played with the New York Mets, but just one of the greatest baseball players of all time, passed away at the age of 93 this afternoon. The Giants announced that earlier this evening. Jake, we talk a lot around these parts about Hank Aaron. That era of baseball gave us some of the absolute greatest players that you'll ever see. And some of us who didn't come along early enough to be able to see Willie Mays play live, it's just been hearing about a legend for the course of our entire lives. And baseball lost a legend on Tuesday.
Certainly did. And you hate to hear that. And certainly anytime you lose one of these baseball legends like that, somebody who became a great ambassador for the game. Like I said, I never watched him play, but I know about his legacy. I know what he meant to this game. And there's been kids that have played baseball and loved baseball because of Willie Mays, who never even got to see him play. And that's a legend in my books.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And if you're somebody who loves the history of the game, I don't know how many times you've seen the 1954 World Series catch over the shoulder by Willie Mays, but I'd have to say it's right on up there with one of the most played highlights in baseball history, and for good reason. You just consider the situation, the athleticism, who that man ended up becoming as his career went on, from a young superstar to one of the absolute biggest superstars in the history of baseball. And again, the entire baseball world mourns the loss of former Giants great Willie Mays, the Hall of Famer who passed away at 93 years of age. Wrapping things up here for the Braves, they are going to finish off this series against the Tigers. Then it's a date with the New York Yankees. That's going to be a tough one, Jake. I know we'll talk about it a little bit more probably tomorrow as we get set for that series. But yeah, if the Detroit Tigers were going to be perhaps a plucky opponent for the Braves, there's nothing plucky about the New York Yankees. They're one of the best slugging teams in baseball.
They are. It's going to be a challenge for this pitching staff. I mean, they've kept the Braves in a lot of games this year, but they're going to go up against, a really good offensive team in the New York Yankees. So we'll see how this starting rotation is able to hold up against them in New York. It's going to be a really tough challenge.
Yeah, there'll be more to talk about with that tomorrow. Chris Sale, though, could be lined up for the opening start there. It seems like the Braves are in good hands because he's somebody that should be pretty familiar with Yankee Stadium from his time, but that is something we'll talk about a little bit more tomorrow. Again, the Braves with another 2-1 win over the Tigers. They clinched the series victory. Now they go for the sweep on Wednesday afternoon when Reynaldo Lopez faces Tarek Skubal of the Tigers. That's going to wrap us up here on the Braves Postcast. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. Leave us those likes and comments. Share the show with a friend. We appreciate that. And subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. We will catch you next time. And until then, so long, everyone.